Hello. Welcome. Good evening or afternoon or morning, however it is where you are. Thank you for joining us today to talk about this beautiful book. Just to make sure you're in the right place, we are at a book launch today for the English translation of a short but certainly not lacking novella known as The Fifth or Au Cinquième. My name is Aaron, and my pronouns are he, his, and him. I'll be helping host tonight, and I'm representing Little Sisters. Little Sisters book and art emporium. We're a queer bookstore / sex shop in downtown Vancouver. We're in the heart of Davie Village. And at Little Sisters, books are important to us. They're part of our history. The late founders of this bookshop, the original manager, Jim, Diva, Bruce, Janine, they fought for our books. They fought our border customs. They fought against literal bombs in our store. They went through court, and there they fought too. They did this for the right for us queers to have our books, for us to be able to create and share our knowledges, our stories, our sex fantasies. I like to think that even though these heroes of mine in my community aren't here or aren't part of this story anymore, every book that comes in and ends up on our shelves or in your hands and your shelves are part of their legacy. And every book reading is a celebration of what they believed in. Little Sisters is located on traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. They have cared for this land for centuries, and we inherit its history as a site of artistic creation, learning, resilience, love, and joy. This event today also wouldn't be possible without the amazing work of Caitlin Press and its imprint Dagger Editions, a book publisher here in BC that promotes the voices of queer, women-identifying writers. Caitlin Press has done so much to help set up and provide guidance for this program, and there is not a part of it that does not owe its existence to them, and especially to Monica Miller, the marketing and promotions coordinator for Caitlin Press, who's also here tonight managing all the little technical bits. In fact, we're going to do a little tech rundown in a sec. So if you want to be proactive and learn how to use the chat, maybe you could just say, hi, Monica, in the chat. Caitlin Press is located on the traditional territories of the Squamish, Sechelt, Sliamon, and Klahoose nations. Caitlin Press receives invaluable support from the Government of Canada and BC Arts Council as an independent publisher. There are, of course, two other people without which this reading wouldn't be possible. Before I introduce them, I want to go over how you can engage with this app, CROWDCAST, that we're using. So firstly, there's no video or audio feeds from audience members, so we don't see your faces or hear your voices, unfortunately. But we do see your names. Instead of using your microphone, the best way to engage here is with a keyboard. Just note that the chat log may appear in certain forms of the event recording afterwards. So if you don't want your name to be shown in the recording, you'll probably want to refrain from using the chat, I believe. And comments in the chat aren't limited to statements in the indicative. You can also ask questions. And to do so, if you're joining on CROWDCAST on desktop, there's a button called Ask a Question or Ask a Q at the bottom. If you're on mobile, I think you have it too. It's just in a different location. Monica Miller from Caitlin Press will be keeping track of the chat and can also tag comments and turn them into questions for to see and vote on. And throughout the evening, I'll be keeping track of them to bring up wherever there's a convenient moment. You will find there's also a poll feature, which we'll mention occasionally. At the bottom, you may have a notification saying polls, and with a 1 next to it to indicate that we've started a poll. If you haven't answered that, you can check that out as well. And I'll draw attention when other polls come up. And finally, now I'd like to introduce you to our writers tonight, whom we're celebrating. So the author, MP Boisvert, holds a master's degree in creative writing from the University of Sherbrooke, was executive director of the Quebec LGBT Council from 2015 to 2020, and a consultant for various Quebec and Canadian ministries on issues of sexual and gender diversity. She's the co-founder of Fier Le Fait, Sherbrooke's pride in Quebec, and has contributed to columns and articles to anthologies, periodicals, and websites. Au Cinquième, published by Éditions Lemèche in 2017, is her first novel. So this book, originally in French, has been translated into English by Monica Meneghetti, whose first book, What the Mouth Wants, was also by Caitlin Press, was a Lambda, oops, it's on the camera feed, was a Lambda Literary Award finalist and tied as the Bi Book Award winner. Her translation from Italian, The Call of the Ice, was a Banff Mountain Book Award finalist. Ethically non-monogamous, Monica lives in Vancouver, BC, with 2 of her 3 long-term partners. And these 2 amazing women will be reading passages from this book, The Fifth. Oops, I lost my place in the script. I'm sorry. From this book, which is an incredible book, The Fifth, A Love Story. I have many feelings about this book, but I think it's best if I leave you to feel them for yourself. But let me read the back cover so you know what it's about. Let me just put this back. So, Alice, Gail, Camille, and Simon live together in a polyamorous relationship, affectionately referred to as the family. Camille, a trans woman, and Gail are lovers. Simon is in a relationship with Alice, and Alice is in a relationship with everyone. But when Alice invites her seemingly straight ex-boyfriend Eloy, if that's not foreshadowing, I don't know what it is, to move into their Sherbrooke, Quebec apartment, albeit temporarily, the family's dynamic begins to change in unexpected ways. Narrated by each family member, along with script-like interludes, the daily lives of Alice, Gail, Camille, Simon, and Eloy show a loving and satisfying non-traditional relationship. Infused with Quebecois culture, The Fifth is a story rarely represented in Canadian literature. Not about infidelity or possessiveness, rather it is about individuals as they navigate love and desire and punch stereotypes and stigma in the face. The Fifth is honest, delightfully unconventional, breaks down barriers, and challenges norms in our society. And with that, I am going to leave you with our two amazing authors. And you can find this book here at Little Sisters, where we have copies signed by both Monica and with signed book plates from MP. And so I'm going to move on to MP now.
All right. Thank you so much, Aaron. I want to say that recently I moved from Montreal to Plantagenet in Ontario. That's a little village close to Ottawa, close-ish to Ottawa. So I think we have people in Vancouver, in and around Ottawa. We have people from Quebec as well, in my hometown of Sherbrooke. And yeah, that's pretty amazing. I also want to mention a little funny anecdote, which is that one of my partners, May, calls the book The Fifth, and that's because fifth is actually a slur in French to designate a gay person, and then we think it's pretty funny that pronouncing that in French is a little funnier. So
that's it. I'm calling it that from now on.
Yeah, I think you should. So yeah, some fun translation stories for you. I think I'm supposed to read is that what the script says?
Yeah, I think we can move to the first passage.
Awesome. I'm a little nervous, so I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. Well, I wanted to say first before I move on, thank you so much to my editor, Lamèche, who helped me publish this book. Thank you so much to Sébastien, who was the principal editor, and to my master's thesis director, Isabelle, who helped me create the book in itself in the first place. And as for the other thanks, they will probably show up during this discussion. So I'm reading, for those of you who have the book, I'm reading from page 42. It's called Eloy, Advancing the Cause of Tofu. So we have Eloy. I've got to say that it's weird for me to pronounce Eloy because in French it's Éloi and it sounds a lot different. So I'm still going to try and do it. So let's go, and I'm just not gonna read the whole passage, the whole chapter. It's not super long. It's just like 4 pages, but still. Okay, everyone is with me? Okay. Eloy, Advancing the Cause of Tofu. I'm not sure what they want from me. We have to be in the kitchen. They all take advantage of it. Maybe they're hoping I'll entertain them. They even manage to find something in exactly the same place at exactly the same time so they can hang around me. And yet I'm just cooking, not stripping. I don't know what's so fascinating about me, apart from being younger, skinnier, and hairier, and possibly more educated too, although I doubt they're looking to be reminded of that. Sometimes I even manage to be funny, but only if someone deserves it, and no one here is worthy, especially not me. I trip over the small cat while going to throw broccoli into the wok. He was lying on the floor right behind me while I was cutting the florets into more or less bite-sized pieces. If I hadn't been told not to, I would pick him up with my left hand while carrying the cutting board in my right, to balance it out. The amount of cat hair in the food dramatically increased since my arrival, so a new rule has been instituted: no cat holding while cooking. It's a pain in the ass. If one of them rubs up against my legs, how am I to refuse? Does he not deserve special attention? A perfect score for his dignified bearing. Should he meow to express his needs, am I supposed to ignore him on the grounds of a rule meant to prevent the proliferation of fur, even though it's in the very air we breathe and blankets every surface? It's so arbitrary. Not letting me pet the cats as I please is their way of controlling me, of punishing me for being in their natural habitat. Speaking of punishment, I heard them again last night. I don't think Simon was with them. From what I can tell, the sleeping arrangements change every night, mostly according to Alice's mood and libido. She spends at least one night a week in each room, except mine, of course. So then, it must have been just them, the women. I heard the sound of a hand, or hands, smacking skin. Which areas of skin, I have no idea. And breathless murmuring, muffled moans, stifled cries. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I considered pounding on the dividing wall so as not to keep all the awkwardness to myself. I thought about putting in earplugs, but I only had Q-tips and I was afraid they'd get stuck. I considered sleeping in the living room, but I probably would have heard just as much out there and been physically uncomfortable as well. More uncomfortable than right now, which is saying a lot. I'm not sure what's behind this awkwardness I feel. Is it longing? Disgust? Amazement? Am I turned on? Alice and I were just kids when we were a thing. 16-year-old kids, but still kids. Strange times. Maybe I wanted to spank her back then, or tie her up, ask her to call me sir. Maybe I just didn't know it yet. In this apartment, love and sex are everywhere. All four of them snuggle up together at the slightest provocation, no matter how banal. Say Alice runs into Camille on the way to the bathroom, they will hold each other for ages. Or say Gail joins Alice and Simon on the couch to watch a movie. She will sit between them and get lovingly enveloped. Only Simon refuses cuddles when offered, and sometimes Alice. No one seems to mind. Me, I only cuddle the cats, and they even cuddle me back. They're softer anyway. That's it for Eloy.
So I wanted to bring attention to that there's another poll which speaks to one of the later sections in the book. If you want to answer that, and the foods that are mentioned there correspond to the different characters in the family. If there are any questions, we'd love to see them in the chat, and we'll just wait a few minutes.
Yeah, how does it feel to read that in English?
Well, it went better than I thought it would. Sometimes in English, I don't know how to pronounce certain written words, but I think I got them all right.
You did great.
I think that it's a little strange because it's kind of like I'm reading someone else's writing, which I am technically. I wrote the original words, but like you wrote this book, Monica. So yeah, it's very strange, and the whole thing, like getting translated, is very strange. I often would get like emails about it, or hear about like, or even when I received like the cover, I was like, what is this book? Like, who is this? What? But I think I really only realized it when I held it in my hands, and I was like, whoa, like this is actually, like, I had seen the book played and everything, and it was just so distant and everything. Like all this happened while most of the translation was this summer, right, Monica?
It was winter. Yeah, started in the winter. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was pregnant back then. And I gave birth at the end of May. So like my whole headspace was either in the pandemic or in the pregnancy or in my newborn baby. So all of this back and forth with my editor and everything was very distant. And now seeing it, I'm kind of like, oh, it's like my author self reemerges as this book emerges as well. And it's just it sounds really good, like out loud as well as reading. So I think that's props to you, Monica. I think it's really good.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, I just yeah. It was pretty nerve-wracking for me to translate this because knowing you were from Sherbrooke, I kind of figured you were probably very bilingual and would have, enough knowledge of English to actually have an opinion of what I did and the choices that I made. So it was something I had to sort of put in the back of my mind. Otherwise, I probably would have like frozen up with performance anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true that a lot of people speak both English and French in Sherbrooke. I was actually an army brat, so I spent my early childhood in Trenton, where my dad was a pilot in the army. So that's why I learned English pretty early on. But I would never have translated my own book. I think I maybe had the capacity to do that, but I really didn't want to because I was, I did creative writing as in my studies, and so I was kind of trained to write in French, and I think it would have really messed up my my writing if I had tried to translate it. And also I feel like there's something, there's a lot of English in the original book, and I prefer that in my writing, going back and forth between the two, but with French as a basis. And I don't think I would have had the same energy with I don't know, with English being the main.
On that, I noticed there's actually a question where a person's asked, could we hear some of the original French?
Oh, sure. I can start and read the same passage. Just maybe the first paragraph. Have I lost you guys, or are you still there but with no camera?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm trying to find it. Give me a second.
So I'll just, while MP's getting ready, I'll just say welcome to everybody who's joined us. I know we had some people joining in late, so welcome to everybody who's joining us online. Thanks for helping us celebrate this book in the middle of this very strange time. This is the first time that MP and I have talked in real time, looking at each other's faces. So you're getting to kind of witness us sort of talking about this book in the process for the first time. So I hope that's as exciting for you as it is for me.
So I'm just going to read maybe a paragraph and a half following, actually. So if you already speak French, you'll just have la suite de l'histoire. J'ai demandé à ce qu'on mange moins de viande. 3 mois que je cuisine végé quand c'est mon tour. Il n'y a que Camille qui semble encore rébarbative face au tofu qui grille à présent dans le grand wok. Et Simon qui nous fait toujours manger du steak de chevreuil. C'est mon père qui l'a chassé, ça compte pas. Si me toucher n'est pas dans leurs intentions immédiates, pourquoi rester autour de moi? Simon, toujours le plus éloigné possible, comme si j'avais la peste. Alice, toujours la plus proche, comme si elle espérait quelque chose de moi. Je ne sais pas encore ce que j'en pense. Si je lui disais un truc pareil, Alice me répondrait, comment tu peux ne pas savoir? There's the French, some of the French. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent read in French. I really encourage people to check it out. And you know, I find it really fascinating to read books in both languages to kind of because of I do the translation work. So it's fascinating to me to actually get a view of what the choices were that the translator made. There's a lot of really tricky choices, a lot of translation and bridging between cultures and languages. There's all kinds of language puzzles to solve. And there's a translator's note at the back of Le Fif that will kind of talk more about that to you language nerds out there who might want to know more about that.
One of the questions for Monica is, how did you translate the parts where MP mixes French and English in her writing?
Oh, so Anglicisms, that meaning like when there's two things. There's the bilingual kind of use of English in the book, and there's also Anglicism, which is like English words that are borrowed into French, which is quite common in Quebecois French. And so where it was an Anglicism, I glossed that to a Gallicism, which is like a French expression. So in English, we would say je ne sais quoi. You know, we say that in English, it's kind of a thing. So what I did was I tried to preserve the flavor of those Anglicisms being present in the original text by using Gallicisms wherever was appropriate elsewhere in the book. So that was kind of that little sort of creative decision that I made to preserve that flavor. And then where it was actually, you know, English expressions, I thought about changing them into French because you know, this is a Canadian book, and it was really important to me to retain that sense of bilingualism that's underpinning a lot of our lives. And it was awkward. So I didn't do that. I only used the Gallicisms. I only said, you know, I tried to preserve the syntax of French also, where it was appropriate, where it would work. I actually tried to use this French syntax. So you'll see that in places in the book too. But it was a very tricky procedure to make it still kind of smoothly readable and not draw attention to the language. You know, it needed to really be the story and the characters and the journey of the book that was in the forefront. And I didn't want to make any choices that would actually make you focus on the language. So, and then there was also like all the beautiful lyricisms and turns of phrase and amazing humor that MP put into the book. And those were the things that I really wanted to have as the top focus. So that's how I handled it. I hope that answers your question.
That's an amazing answer, by the way. I love that. I did notice some of the structure, the French-ish structure of sentences, and I find. Oops, sorry about that. I find that I love that it was intentional.
Yeah, very intentional.
We don't have time, unfortunately, to go through all the questions, but I think we could move on to the next passage with Monica.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I have two favorite characters, but absolutely fell in love with all of these characters. I was alone on retreat doing the first draft, and there was a day that I was walking on my break, and I thought, I'm not alone out here. I've got like these 5 people that I'm like hanging out with every day. And so thanks for creating these amazing characters, MP, because I just had such a great time, so much joy, so many hours of like complete abandon and immersion in their lives. And just, I felt so accompanied by them the whole time while I was completely alone. So one of my favorites is Gail. And I'm choosing to read a passage that's Gail waking up at 4 a.m. And if you've got the book, you can read along. That's page 73. I wake up thirsty. Reaching out to grab my water bottle, I knock my glasses off and accidentally turn on the radio, which gets the cats yowling at the door. All I want is a drink. I mash my lips onto the spout of the Nalgene, but apparently I'm not lined up. I'm slightly off the mark. So the wannabe gulp of water pours right between my breasts, where my skin is the most delicate, and pools in the middle part of my bra. Lake cleavage. It's cold, and it pisses me off, and I hate being wet. I use the sheet to dry myself off. Now I'm stuck with a soaked sheet. Fuck, might as well get up now. It's still dark. No, it's the color of streetlights on fresh snow. Wow, I'm so inspired even at this hour. I should get a job at Benjamin Moore. Even after the commotion with the radio, Camille hasn't budged. And when I get out of bed, she grunts something. Not talking to me, I don't think. I quickly assess the pros and cons of putting on a robe before leaving the room. After all, I'm in my underwear, and Eloy is so easily traumatized. I wouldn't want to break him. But I love the shiver of cold air on my skin. Fuck the robe. I open the door a crack, check right, check left, and slip to the bathroom with the cats following behind. The light over the sink stings my eyes and annoys the big cat, who starts caterwauling like a queen in heat. Shh, I plead. He just gives me a confused look with his tongue sticking out. So rude. The mirror shows me what I'd hoped. A clump of hair poised acrobatically atop my head, a feat accomplished by hitting the pillow with my hair still wet from the shower. Perfect. The cat scrolls and unscrolls around my calves, still meowing away. I use a yellowing washcloth to clean off the smudged eyeliner from my bad removal job last night. I give my bush a scratch. The hair on my outer lips makes a raspy sound. There's a textural logic to it. My nails get into it. It feels good, what can I say? And in their fervor, wind up venturing into the folds in question. Huh, still wet. I grab some toilet paper to dry myself, and before there's even time to realize my discharge is strangely clumpy, I'm furiously scratching my vulva. Fuck me, a yeast infection. My family doctor recently recommended I reduce the frequency of sexual encounters because it could be a contributing cause of my frequent vaginal infections. My poor hypersensitive pussy doesn't want me having so much fun. And yet, I'm not delicate. I have big bones with lots of meat on them. It runs in the family, even though my mother and sisters wage a fierce battle against our blubbery genes. I have big pores and hairy limbs. I have dark, thick hair everywhere, actually, around my nipples and on my chin. Hairs so wiry I could use them for toothpicks. I'm not delicate. My palms are bone dry. The lines on them are so defined, a blind fortune teller could read them. I could cut steak with my toenail. My eyebrows are dark forests that would make great camping spots. My desire is an issue. It increases over time, and that alone makes getting older a wonderful thing. I masturbate daily, but that doesn't mean I'm obsessed. I love both women and men, but that doesn't mean I'm confused. The effect a whip has on a willing back drives me wild, but that doesn't mean I'm crazy any more than disliking penetration makes me an untouchable saint. Demanding respect from my colleagues doesn't mean I'm pretentious, and not speaking to my parents anymore doesn't mean I'm ungrateful. I'm not a coward for saying no to things I don't want. Requiring consent before being touched doesn't mean I'm stubborn, and falling in love with someone else's partner doesn't make me a homewrecker. I'm neither too sensitive, nor too complex, nor too intense. I'm neither too gorgeous, nor very ugly, neither too open, nor too closed off. 15-year-old Gail would tell 30-year-old me, you love yourself too much. 30-year-old Gail would tell 15-year-old Gail, shut your pie hole. And I'll leave the rest of the chapter for you to read yourselves.
Thank you so much. It was really great. Oh.
Yeah, I love Gail. She's so, I just love Gail. Every time I was like, oh, I get to do a chapter of Gail, or it was either Gail or Camille. Those were the chapters where I was always like, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh yeah, I get to do Gail today. You know, I get to do Camille today. It's just like, it would be my day to spend with them. It was great.
I love this translation. Aaron, I'm not sure you had, if maybe you had something to.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just think this translation is so good because I remember how I felt writing this. It was actually one of the first chapters that I wrote, but I had written it for something else. It was a standalone for a little while. And then I kept coming back to this text, and I just thought, man, I need to get this into something. And like who's how can I say this? Who fits the bill with this? And I thought that Gail it just screamed Gail, and then I don't know, it sounds exactly like it should sound in English, and I just think it's amazing. It's probably one of my favorite passages.
Aww. Yeah. Wow, I'm glad I picked that one.
Yeah. And here's my dad complaining in the chat.
Yeah.
Like, Dad, what
Dad
were you
saying,
expecting?
sorry, Dad. TMI.
Should have put a trigger warning or something on this chapter for my dad, because I thought it was just my mom at first. Sorry, not sorry, actually. Yeah.
One of the questions asks comments on the phrase scrolls and unscrolls regarding the cat, saying I love it, asking what the French for that verb is.
Oh, interesting. I'm gonna check. I wanted to say too, it's funny how both these chapters that we read involve the cats a lot. Like they're present, but they're not like omnipresent in all of the chapters. So it's funny. Yeah. It's a very feels very cuddly. I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, that chapter really was one of the ones that made me fall deeply in love with Gail. It's like, I love this woman. She's amazing. Yeah.
I'm just trying to find exactly, oops, the right. It's simply it's actually better in English, I think. It says, le chat s'enroule et se déroule autour de mes mollets. So it's really like not quite curling. It's like what would be the more direct translation, do you think?
Rolling and unrolling?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But, you know, it's that motion that cats do around your legs. And I mean, I don't live with a cat, but I've experienced that enough and I've seen that enough that I just kept that image in my mind and waited for the right word that would really evoke that. That was the choice I made. Hopefully it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Tasha's saying the 6th more chapters written from the cat's point of view. It's the sequel.
Yeah.
Furling and unfurling. Monica Miller is suggesting, furling and unfurling is one of the ones that I considered and rejected because it so often shows up in descriptions about sails on ships. And I didn't want to evoke any kind of watery kind of ship imagery. And I picked scrolling and unscrolling because it sort of is more bookish, and these characters are pretty into books, especially Alice. So that was my kind of creative choice there.
I think you can really feel the role when imagining like an old scroll of kinds. Yeah.
And I love that it has the word role in it. So it's kind
Absolutely.
of,
Yeah. I have a question. If I know that people are maybe asking questions too, but can I go first?
Yeah, there are no pending questions for this passage at least.
Oh,
So go ahead.
cool. It's actually a general question. I don't know how Caitlin Press or yourself came across this book. Do you have, like, was it you that introduced the book to Caitlin Press, or how did they approach you?
You know, we'll have to have Monica Miller jump in if she happens to know, but I have no idea. I know Vicki Johnstone, who's the publisher at Dagger Editions and Caitlin Press, is very active in the publishing community across Canada. And I imagine it was I'm going to guess it was probably at one of the meetings or book fairs. All I know is one day out of the blue, I get a phone call from Vicki, and as happens, it was just a couple of months after I had like literally given up the ghost on the literary thing. I was like, I'm tired of it. I'm just going to have a regular job and try and get a pension. And I wind up in this beautiful, cushy little, beautiful career. I thought was a new career starting. And I get this call from Vicki. Oh, I've got this book. I think you're perfect translator for it. And I'm like, what? And she told me what it was about, MP, and I just about fell off my rolling office chair because I was like, are you serious? This is exactly the kind of book I have always dreamt of translating ever since I did my first translation, which was an adventure memoir. And ever since then, I was actually after that looking sort of high and low for a book like this to translate, and I didn't have the right connections. And so I just abandoned it. But I had just been dreaming for years of translating a queer and poly book that had some really good humor in it. And I was really wanting to do some French translations. So it just sort of was one of those incredible serendipitous gifts that fell in my lap. And I couldn't say no to, even though I had started like a fairly committed job that was going to take a lot of energy. And I had no clue how I was going to make it happen. But I signed the contract anyways. And kind of Vicki and I were both like, oh, we probably won't get the funding for it anyways. Just sign on the dotted line and just forget about it, basically, is what I did. But then we did wind up getting the funding. So, thank you to the funders.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for
Canada
sure.
Council. Monica can probably fill in who the different funders were because I can't remember right now, but we definitely had support for it.
I think it is the Government of Canada, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Province of British Columbia Arts Council, and the Publishers Tax Credit.
Excellent, yeah.
According to this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so.
One of the questions, actually just returning to questions that we didn't answer in the previous section, one person asked, what was it like marketing and promoting a book during the pandemic? If either of you might be able to speak to that.
I cannot, but maybe Monica can answer.
Well, Monica Miller is the marketing person extraordinaire at Caitlin Press Dagger Editions. For myself, as a Canadian literary author, you learn very quickly that you got to champion your work quite a bit yourself, because small presses often don't have the resources to spend a lot of time promoting your book. That said, I was very happy with the promotion that I had from Dagger Editions. And on top of that, I actually did throughout the process of translating the book, I was actually posting on Facebook for people who were interested. I had these translation progress reports. And actually, if if you're a friend of mine, you can go on and search hashtag translation progress report on my Facebook, and you'll see all the posts that I was putting in about my journey with the translation. And, that was like me kind of like from the very beginning, really wanting engagement from the community. And, because this community, the poly community, the queer community is like absolutely essential to me being able to do this type of work. I feel so supported. So it wasn't really so much marketing as it was just like community involvement and connection. And sometimes I would even throw out little like language puzzles to see, if people wanted to play with them. And then also when it came time to actually announce the book, I was quite sensitive about it actually, because this is a really difficult time for so many of us. And I didn't want anyone kind of going, what the heck? Like, how does, like I myself was like, how the hell do you do this in the middle of the pandemic? Like, how the hell did we do this? How did we pull this off? And so, yeah, it was kind of sensitive, but at the same time, I think so many people during the pandemic have turned to books for companionship and for stimulation and, just entertainment too. And so it was, I felt quite hopeful that, maybe there was going to be more interest in buying books. And
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, off topic just a little bit, the book itself all happens in the apartment of the people
so
who live
true.
in it. And that was on purpose, actually, because there was something I wanted to say about how polyamorous relationships are not so welcome outside of the home. And so I wanted the people to be the characters to be as comfortable as they can, and that was within their home. And well, I guess people, I think it feels like an accurate book to come out at this time where people are actually stuck in their houses. But this book doesn't feel like a trap, it feels like more of a hug, or even like a breath of fresh air, where like it's so loving. I mean, I've had some people tell me like it's so nice to see a book about queer people being happy and loving each other so much. And like there's very little, there is a little bit of outside breaks, like people disrupting them, but it's mostly about them and their happiness. So like I think that's a good thing to keep in mind when getting out this book at this time. But also I felt the same as you did. I was like a bit disconnected from my friends and my family, and I was kind of like, they're not going to be interested in like relaunching this book, and they've read it already. I've already like knocked their ears out with this, but actually the response has been really, really great. And it's not that it's not common, but it doesn't happen that often that Quebec authors are translated unless they're really famous. So everyone was kind of like, whoa, like you made it, man. Like you are a star now. And I was kind of like, I'm not sure. I published one book. That's it. I just got really lucky. And I think I did. It was like great coincidence, like Monica said, like a connection and then a good translator, and there you go. And funding somewhere in between. So I think it's a good book for to feel like you have kind of a blanket wrapped around you during this pandemic.
Yeah.
If I can just, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I was just going to ask another question. So perhaps if you have something to speak to that beforehand.
I just wondered if now might be a good time for me to, sort of pop in my plug for the 5th. Like, I am so excited and so happy that this book exists in French and in English in our country, because as many may know who are watching this, books that have a representation of queer characters and polyamorous characters and even kinky characters are really in the minority. There's very little out there. A lot of the books that are polyamory based are about how-tos and different kinds of sort of self-help, and these are really important books. But the other thing we don't have a lot of is just fiction that really captures the reality of our lives and all its complexity without showing, without reinforcing all the stereotypes that are starting to be bandied about regarding polyamory in the media. And so it's kind of like a personal, like, pet project of mine to, like, really encourage grassroots storytelling from the poly community, because only by having a diversity of stories out in the world can we avoid being kind of pigeonholed by these stereotypes that we often see. And one of them is often, like, even if you see the articles in Psychology Today or the Times or things like that, it's usually about couples opening up their relationship. And there's very few books out there that are about that are about a group dynamic, a family dynamic, and a happy, stable family dynamic where there's real complexity to the relationships over the longer term. And that's certainly my experience. So it was wonderful to see that effect reflected in such a beautiful novel that's well written. The characters are so real and alive. The story is really pithy. There's a lot of evolution of the characters from the start to the end. And it's really fun to read. And I hope that people read it, whether they're queer, poly, or not. It's really, MP, you did an amazing thing writing this book in the first place, and now having an English edition out is very much a feather in your cap. And it's a huge gap that you're filling in literature for our community. So I'm just so honored that I had the chance to do this for you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
If I could ask a question myself, the subtitle to the book, A Love Story, was that there in the original French book as well?
Yes, it is. It's not on the cover, but it's in the first on the first page. It says "Roman d'amour," and you see. I don't know if you see it in the right, like I see it. Like,
yes.
Backwards, but for me it was a bit tongue in cheek, because like "Roman d'amour" or a love story is such a I don't know, a loaded kind of title or a subtitle. And so I wanted to make it a little sarcastic, or I don't know what the right word in English is for this, like tongue-in-cheek, by putting an S at the end, whereas it's, and like it gives you a clue, right? When you open the book, you're like, oh, okay, this is not maybe what I'm expecting in terms of a love story. Yeah,
I loved how it subverted that trope of the love story, that overarching dominant monogamy narrative of the love story. There's even the love story by Eric Siegel. And so actually that was one of the things that we really puzzled back and forth about, how to translate that so that we could really capture that subversiveness of that subtitle. And going with, like, roman d'amour is actually a genre title, romance novel, right? A romance novel, it's a genre, romance. So it was like, how do we play with this. So in the translation, it didn't necessarily translate romance novel. I actually went with something that had an allusion to this very, very popular, well-known English book by Eric Siegel called A Love Story, or was it Love Story or The Love Story? I can't remember which. And so if this is basically just subverting that by adding an S, and it's like claiming it for, you know, queering it, polying it for our purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, like I've totally felt like it didn't really fit what I kind of thought of as the trope of a love story, and yet like I don't think I've read a book that felt as full of love as this one because of all the poly and queer resonances that really touched me, and I think a lot of us can really relate to that we don't see in media, as you've said already, Monica.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could move on to the next and final passage.
Oh, this is fun one.
Yeah. So
a little bit of drama for you people.
Some theater.
Some theater. So I'll just quickly tell you that the chapters, the way the book is set up is each chapter changes point of view. So you get to hear this, what's going on in the apartment through all of the different 5 people's eyes and filters and all of their emotional things that they have on top of it. And then there's also a 6th chapter, which I thought was so apt because it's like the 6th thing is the relationship amongst all of them, the larger dynamic in the house. And so that those chapters are written as though they were script. And so we're going to read one of them for you.
Yes, this is what it looks like for you guys. So it's really written like a theater kind of script, or yeah.
And I'll just quickly set it up and say that this conversation happens after the family's been gathered around the dinner table, and there's been some tension around this, you know, this 5th person that's moved in.
Mm-hmm.
Before I start, would you like to say, Monica and MP, whom you're speaking for, or the characters you'll be?
Yeah, I'm going to play Simon in this script,
and I'll be the voice of Camille.
Okay, sounds good. So, Camille in Gail's room. Enter Camille, forest green fleece robe, steering Simon, light blue cotton t-shirt and gray flannel bottoms, into the room. He drags himself over to the 2 desks at the back of the room. He plunks down into one of the office chairs, grabs hold of the armrest, closes his eyes, and takes a deep breath. Camille sits in the other chair and swivels around while looking up at the ceiling.
Talk to me.
whatever.
Camille stops swiveling, lifts her feet up onto the chair, and hugs her knees.
We can play guessing games all day if you like.
Don't feel like talking about it.
Me neither. That works out well, eh? Come on, out with it. I didn't drag you out of here for nothing. Sorry, I didn't drag you out of there for nothing.
You shouldn't have.
You were about to torch the tablecloth. I love that tablecloth.
Can't let those 2 out of your sight for a second.
They're adults, you know, all grown up and everything.
Can't be trusted.
Who? Alice?
Oh, come on. I mean Eloy.
Is it supposed to be obvious who you mean?
It is obvious.
Okay. So tell me, why can't he be trusted?
He's hurt her before.
She left him, right?
And how come, do you think?
I never asked her. Did she tell you?
No, but why else would she have left?
She's the one who offered him a place here.
Maybe she has an incurable case of Stockholm Syndrome. How should I know?
You're not making sense right now.
What do you mean?
Well, did she leave you because you did something to hurt her?
That's different.
Oh, right. This is different because you're so special.
You don't get it.
So explain it to me then, just for fun.
Silence. Simon fumes with his eyes closed for a long while. Camille spins around in her chair until he starts talking again.
It's just that he's like me, only better.
Only what?
Better.
Better how?
He's more in shape, let's say. What? It's true.
Well, even if it is, I don't see how that makes him better.
Well, it can't hurt, that's for sure.
Ugh, nonsense. You're making a big issue out of nothing. You'll need to explain what his godlike physique has to do with you being uneasy.
If he's better than me and she can have him, why would she still want me?
He's not better than you. He's just another dude.
That doesn't help. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean at all.
It's not my fault you don't get it.
No, I don't get it. Do you hear yourself right now? What are you, 12 all of a sudden? Are you telling me you feel threatened because Eloy's a guy?
Silence. Simon stares at the floor.
Little.
Ay.
You really don't see how that matters, eh?
I don't, no.
Camille's attitude and body language slowly shifts from sad and serious to tense and stressed. She seems to want to move away from Simon.
The guys she sleeps with are just friends, usually. Since we got back together, she's only had female lovers. But this guy, she's getting attached to.
So, what does that change? I'll tell you what that changes. Absolutely nothing, Simon.
I'm uncomfortable.
Eureka! Finally! This is about you, not Alice. She's got nothing to do with it.
Alice has everything to do with it.
You and Eloy are different people.
I need her.
I do too, so?
He'll wind up replacing me.
Ay.
Quit saying that. You have no idea what it's like.
Oh, but I do. I know very fucking well, in fact.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because even if she loves him, don't look at me like that. Of course she loves him. We all know that, except him. Even if she loves him, and it hurts the big man's poor little ego, this is what you wanted, isn't it, my dear? To accept that you can't be everything to her, because trying to be already destroyed your relationship once. Because you know she can't be everything to you either, even in all of her fucking magnificence, because you're massive, you're immense. The elephant in this room is you. And just because you aren't fucking anyone else right now doesn't mean she's all you'll ever need.
You think you know everything.
I only know what people are willing to tell me.
Knowing and understanding aren't the same thing.
All of your philosophizing doesn't make you the wise one here.
If only you listened instead of losing it over me differentiating. Oh, wait, sorry, discriminating there. I've exposed myself as a sexist monster over me saying I'm scared. All you got out of it is I'm totally fine with girls, but guys terrify me.
Do you realize what you're saying? Oh, Camille, girls are no threat to me. Come on, I'm the boyfriend, the primary. Literally no vagina can measure up to the power of my penis.
That's not what I am saying.
It may not be what you meant, but it is what you said. Alice has 3 partners, Gail, me, and you. And when have you ever imagined she loves you more than she loves Gail, more than she loves me? But now here you are out of the blue thinking she loves Eloy more than you? I knew you had quite the ego, but now you've just managed to obliterate anyone who isn't you. You think you love her more than I do? You think he's going to make her come harder? That he's wittier than you? You think it doesn't bother us to see her swoon over him like she's falling in love for the first time? You think we enjoy seeing her bursting with NRE? Knowing that even though she still loves us, we're not the new shiny anymore? If there were only women in her life, you think she'd be on the prowl for you or him? That she'd be missing a goddamn dick in her life? You're whining because you imagine Eloy might be what Alice has always wanted. But don't forget, last time you tried having her all to yourself, she was totally capable of getting the fuck out of the relationship. Gail loved Alice to death before you came begging for a second chance. She didn't have to give you one. Your dick might be bigger than mine, Simon, but that doesn't give you the right to claim the place of alpha male.
There you go. Thank you so much for reading this with me.
That was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, I love
Did
Camille.
you guys like it?
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that out there. It looks like you did. And what I just love about Camille is this amazing trans woman who just takes no prisoners and is like takes this cisgendered guy aside and just kind of dresses him down about all of his male privilege that he's exercising within this poly relationship. And it's just such a brilliant chapter. It's just, you did such an amazing creation of that. Like, I think there's a ton of people out there who can relate to that scene.
Yeah, that was kind of the point. I remember when I wrote this, I was actually having I was doing this kind of creative writing summer school in Rimouski, and what was great about that whole summer school was that we were spending lots of time outside writing and outside in front of the St. Lawrence River. And at the Rimouski level, you can't see on the other side. You know, it's not like Quebec City or Montreal. Like it's seemingly the ocean. So it was really great. And actually, I wrote it because a friend of mine was having, while we were at summer school, so she was there with me, and she was texting back and forth with her, let's say, dick boyfriend, who was being so jealous of this other dude that she was seeing, but there was, you know, absolutely no reason for him to be jealous. And even if there was, like, just deal with your emotions, man. Like, don't put this all on your woman. So I was really upset by this because this was a really good friend of mine, and it made me want to scream at him. So I just decided to actually scream at him, but like in writing form.
And that is how we use our creative lives to do what we always wanted to do, but just can't.
Exactly. And like, I'm glad that it's still it seems like it's still relevant in like, I wrote this in 2015, I think, or no, it was in 2014. So it was quite a while ago. But I mean, I see this again and again in many relationships about how, oh no, I mean, she's being not cool, and like, you know, and you just want to shake them and be like, just own whatever you're feeling. It's okay, but like, don't put it on other people. And I'm really glad about how it turned out. And it was actually the first dialogue that I wrote that made me want to interspeed the chapters with dialogues, because, and you said like, it's actually like this, the sixth, thing is their relationships. But for me, it was also like showing that the only parts of themselves that they can see, that the others that they can see, is through talking. And like, we see inside the characters with the other chapters, but they can't see what the other person is thinking. So like, I think it's really important to shine some light on the fact that in any relationship, you only have this one figure that's totally incomplete. And when you have many relationships, it's even bigger how this dialogue is just completely incomplete. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much going on that you're not privy to, in the
Exactly.
other relationships. And this was a really brilliant idea, using these script chapters, because it gave us a glimpse into the dynamics between the people, and we got to just like have that omniscient point of view that allowed us to actually witness the dynamic and see them from the outside rather than looking out from their own eyes. And I just think it would have been like, the book is way stronger because you made that decision, in my opinion.
Thank you. I also love writing dialogue. I don't know if it would be any good in actual theater form, but like in this writing, like reading medium, I think it works. And I don't know. I'm also good at remembering parts of dialogues, or being able to actually imagine what I would say to another person, or what the person would respond. So like, I think I really enjoy doing this. And so this was kind of what's the word? A caprice? How do you say that in English?
Whims.
A whim, yeah, of an author whim.
Yeah.
I'd like to draw. Oh, go ahead, Monica.
No, I'm just saying that I'm just sort of scrolling to look at the chat and see, the feedback that we're getting, and I'm just really happy that we have that kind of engagement. It's really hard not to see people's faces, but
Yeah.
It's great to see the engagement on the side. I wish we could save the chat because I'm probably missing a lot. But anyhow, sorry, Aaron, go ahead. It's sort of hard to do this on the screen. We just like wind up interrupting each other.
I just want to bring attention to one of the new polls. If you want to answer that while we're going through the questions, asking about love languages. Interestingly, Gail, which I think is quite appropriate, Gail's love language we represented as food, which I love. So a question for Monica. A person's asking if you've asking about your translation work in the past, if you've ever translated text completely outside of a familiar context to you. Asking because they received a question from a would-be translator in Ukraine who is a scholar of English literature, basically like asking like, what is this, the Communist Party of Romania?
Sorry.
The question being sort of like, have you ever translated a text completely outside of a context that's familiar to you?
Yes. Well, generally speaking, we try to pair up with someone. Like, a translator tends to need to have a grounding in the culture, the technical language. In this book, there's not only the Quebecois culture to translate and bridge, there's also queer culture, specific things to trans culture, specific things to polyamory, and all of the buzzwords that go with that in the different languages that you're working with. And it's very difficult to translate without having some grounding in that, sort of like the culture and the specialized language. So no, to date, I have only published books, I've only translated books that I had a familiar context for, let's say. One of the books I've translated that isn't published yet is written by the same person who wrote the adventure memoir that I did, which was called The Call of the Ice, and he's an extreme alpinist. But when he started sort of getting too old to do this extreme alpinism, his new dream was to be a helicopter pilot. And he wrote a book about being a helicopter pilot and doing a lot of heli-rescue on Everest, extreme heli-rescue. And he wanted me to translate that, and I did, but I knew I could not do it without having an informant who worked with helicopters, who knew about rescue, who knew about flying. And so I used my contacts to get connected with someone who was a rescue pilot in the Yukon. And so there were times where I would do my own research for the lingo, but then there was times I'd have to go to him and say, would somebody who was a helicopter say this? A helicopter pilot say this? Does this sound natural? And then there was times where it was ambiguous and I'd have to actually clarify technically what equipment he was referring to when he was describing the way he flew a helicopter. And strangely enough, I hadn't actually flown in a helicopter ever in my life when I was translating that book, but I had the opportunity to do that, you know, years later. And it was like everything was different. So ideally, you're going to have enough grounding to understand the context, which I did because it was an alpine context and I had that background. But then, you know, if you're missing gaps as a translator, you need to know that. You can't just fake it. You can't just pretend. You have to go, I don't have this knowledge, and actually go and get it. So usually you don't wind up with, a translator doesn't wind up paired with something that's way out of left field unless there's a really big dearth of translators available, and then they just, you know, do the best they can with the knowledge that they have, and doing a lot of research, doing a lot of interviewing of people from the milieu that you're translating from. There's a lot that goes into it. And yeah, so I'm not sure what happened with this translator that is referred to in the question. Probably they were assigned to something because they were the person available that had the skill and maybe didn't have, you know, the knowledge and wasn't being aware enough of their gaps in the knowledge to actually inform themselves and do the research they needed to do. So this is a great time for me to give a shout out to Marie-Claude Larcher, otherwise known as Hypatia from Space, because she was one of my informants for some very specialized things that I wanted to double check so that I knew I was getting things absolutely correct. And also there was a fellow named JF who is within the community and was able to sort of give me some native speaker kind of, you know, impressions. Like I would say, oh, does this sound weird to you? And he'd be like, yes, or no, or whatever. And so there were, you know, you don't just pretend that you know what you're doing. You actually have to go find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this reminds me of what you were saying about culture, or having to be a little immersed in the culture at least, or knowing it a little bit. It reminds me of when I read the novel called Lullabies for Little Criminals by Heather O'Neill. It came out a few years ago. It's a great book. And I read it in a women's writers course I had at university, but in the original English. And I came across it at the bookstore I was working with at the time in French, and it had been translated in France. And I was quite offended by that. Like, I understand that it was, you know, it was translated in France probably because like they, you know, got their grips on it fairly quickly and they were addressing a French public, but it was quite offensive to me to hear a dialogue from people living in Montreal happening in French with like all of these France expressions. And it was like, did you do any research at all? Like, did you not want to expose your readers to Québécois French? Is that what you were trying to do? And it made my blood curl. Yeah.
There's definitely an elitism there between Parisian French and Québécois French. There was too when I was going to school and studying French, you know, and and yeah, that is disappointing because part of what you want when you're reading a book is to get the same flavor as you got when you read it in the source language. And when you take that source text and you add a cultural layer that actually isn't present in the story, to me, that's a disloyalty to the text. And there's, and yet I would never criticize it, because the being embroiled in a translation, there's so many difficulties in making decisions, and so many pressures too around, like, we have to use, words that people are going to understand, so that it's so that this particular public understands it. But you can really, have some serious missteps. So it was a big goal for me to maintain the Quebecois flavor. And that is why at the beginning of the book, there's actually a scene where Camille talks about why they chose the name Camille for themselves in transition. And she talks about this character that she grew up with that was on a sitcom. And that's why she chose that name, because she's so identified with that girl that she had not yet been able to be. And, I actually, this was one of the things that I actually went into my social media and asked people, like, do you have an equivalent sitcom to Radio Enfer? And I had to actually describe what Radio Enfer was like and what the character was like that I was trying to gloss with. And I
Did you
just
ever
couldn't.
watch that?
I did. That was one of the pieces of research I did, was I went online, I Googled Radio Enfer, I watched that, I got to know Camille in that story. And I was like, this is a great sitcom. And it's like, there was nothing that I was pointed. I'm not a huge expert on pop culture by any means, and I knew that. So I went to people that I knew were more up on TV stuff, and I asked if they knew anything that was an equivalent, and I really couldn't find anything that was loyal to who Camille was that I could use. And so, because also it's a Quebecois book, and we're in Canada, I could just leave that in, because Google it, right? And we're in Canada, there's French stuff going on. And so I made the decision to actually leave the reference to that sitcom as a French sitcom. And that for me was something I deliberated over for quite a while, how to do that.
I love that. I appreciate that. As the author, I'm like, it would have been weird for me to read about something else, but I would have understood.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, because I was raised with both TVs, like in the sense that I was watching The Simpsons in English at like 4 p.m. and then The Simpsons in French at 4:30 p.m. So like, I would watch both TVs in French and English, and I would really have to rack my brain to find something that's equivalent.
Yeah, and because the characters also are clearly bilingual, like there's lots of indication that these characters are bilingual, and so it really was important to me to keep that in. I'm so happy every time you say you're happy with something, I just like light up inside, because I mean, that's all I care about, MP. Like, if you don't like I had so many sleepless nights of like, what if MP doesn't like it? She's so bilingual. She's gonna like, what if she hates it, right? So it's really great to hear that you're happy, and that's like everything to me to hear that.
Thank you so much, Joel. It's a pleasure to hear from you, and it's a pleasure to compliment this book in English, because it's again very strange that I wrote this, but it's just great. I really love it. I do.
Yay!
I feel like everyone's as excited as we are on the chat. Like, they're like, yay!
Oh, nothing's better than the author of the original actually not hating you and not hating what you've done. That hasn't happened to me yet, and I hope it never does.
I hope if I write another novel someday and you want to translate it, I hope we can have this exchange. Like, I don't know if you know about how Anne Hébert had these whole discussions with her translator in English, and they kept those letters and they made a book out of it. That would be awesome.
Oh, cool.
So, I'm not saying I'm Anne Hébert, but like, I think that's pretty cool to have these conversations about translation, and like, oh, what do you think about this and this? And yeah.
But no, MP, you're kind of like the Anne Hébert of polyamory fiction, though. Right? Like
That's
Kamouraska, right? There could be Camille. Kamouraska.
oh my
Anyways,
god, that's like the most absurd compliment I've ever heard.
oh yeah, I would love that. I would translate another one of your books in a heartbeat.
There's I'm reminded of this amazing I don't know how to say this in English, libraire, bookstore clerk. I'm not sure how to say this.
A bookseller.
Yeah, so a bookseller in Le Guillon, which is the feminist bookstore in Montreal, who told me that within fiction, in terms of polyamory related fiction, I was like the cactus in the desert, and I loved it. So shout out to Sandrine who told me this a few years ago.
Yeah.
And the whole team at Le Guillon, whom I absolutely love.
Yeah. Well, I really think people are really gonna gravitate towards the book. Sorry, Aaron.
Oh no, but I think it might be time to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the amazing conversation, dialogue, and the passages. It was amazing to hear you read, especially the script chapter we did together. That was amazing. See you do that in theater. Monica Miller, do you think it would be possible to write in the chat how to access the YouTube recording, or however this will be recorded afterwards? Because this will be available, I believe, in a recording format if you missed parts of it, or if you want to show your friends, things like that. Oh, amazing. Yeah, so you'll get an email with links to the recording. I didn't actually prepare any closing remarks, but thank you so much. I realized we ran a little longer than we may have originally planned, but this was an amazing response. We're so glad that you came and joined us tonight.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you to Little Sisters. When I was in Vancouver 2 years ago, I don't remember, I didn't know about you guys, but I would definitely have checked it out if I had known.
Next time you're in Vancouver, we'll go there together.
Yes, I was going to say, like, thank you so much, Monica, for everything you did for this book and for making it alive in English. And thank you to Caitlin Press and Monica Miller, and Vicky as well. I'm forgetting some people. Thank you to my amazing partners who have been supporting me in my pandemic life and previous life, if there ever was one. Marie and Marie Edith. Yes, we are 3 Maries in this trouble. So yeah, that's the thing. Thanks to my parents who are here and my friends. Very nice. So that's all my thank yous.
Yeah, I also want to thank Little Sisters Bookstore. It's absolutely a highlight for me to have a launch hosted by Little Sisters. Thank you, Erin, because that store is such an icon in our community for having gone to bat for our freedom to read these books and books that celebrate our sexuality. They've really gone to all the way to protect our right to have that. And I know when I was living in a more isolated place and had no community for most of my identities, I would go to Vancouver and I would go to Little Sisters Bookstore, and that's where I found the books that helped me understand myself, figure things out, and really, in the end, it kind of saved my life. So no, they did save my life. They helped me actually have a life rather than just be like this marginalized person who didn't know how to cope with being marginalized. It was great. It was absolutely essential to have Little Sisters Bookstore as a resource, and I just want to see it thrive. And I'm so honored to actually have books on your shelves for that reason. And then, yes, Dagger Editions. Oh my God, Vicki Johnstone, Sarah Corsi, Monica Miller, an incredible team. So amazing to keep this fire burning during pandemic times. So much thanks for Vicki's work in actually spearheading this, getting the book, finding the funding, and choosing me. Absolutely loved doing this project, and it was just another dream, just like my memoir was. It just, like, it couldn't go any better. So they're an amazing publisher that very, very happy to be part of their book list. So please support them. Please support your local bookstore. Please go to your local libraries and request this book, because that is an excellent way to support us and support local publishing and local bookstores. Most of all, thank you to my partners who doing literary work is kind of crazy, isn't it, MP? Like, you go to the ends of the earth to make this stuff happen, and your partners kind of have to, like, be able to cope with that. And it's like, no matter what I needed to do to get this project done, my partners were on board. They never complained. They always supported me, and I am so lucky, and I want to say thank you to them. I would not be able to do what I do without the support that I get from them and from my friends. Oh my God, my friends are so great too. I could say more, but I better shut up now.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I believe to exit the call, you can close the tab, or I believe it might be at the top of the screen. And have a great evening, or morning, or afternoon, or whatever it is, wherever you are.
Okay, bye, MP.
That's the end of
I
the
hope it's
night.
not the last time we talk.
I hope so too.